And Parliament the Constitutional Court gave a judgment that Parliament needed to remedy the unconstitutionality before the 28th of February. They did, but what the truth is that before the 28th of February, it also included the signature of the President. Because what happened, the Speaker, when she wrote to the Concourt for the extensions, she said, we need the extensions because the President still needs to sign the bill. Now we already the end of March and the beginning of April, the President still hasn't signed. So definitely Parliament is in contempt of court.
We've got a fascinating few months ahead of us as South Africa heads towards the 2024 national election, or does it? We'll find out more about that in just a moment. One of the role players who I haven't had a chance to talk with before on BizNews TV is Dr. Michael Louis. He's the chairman of the One South Africa movement, well known as being the home of Mmusi Maimane, who told us a while ago that he's thrown his hat in the ring to become South Africa's new president. We're going to get an update from Dr. Louis this morning on how things are going at One South Africa movement, and more particularly, what has happened to that electoral bill, which has now been well overdue, and what it all means. Dr. Louis, good to be talking with you today, especially after the by-election results that has just come to hand. Yesterday's by-election in Nongoma in deep rural KwaZulu-Natal. And I mention this because the pollsters have got really strange figures when you start looking at this by-election result. Action South Africa, which seems to have been written off by the pollsters as a 2 to 3% party in South Africa, got 10% of the vote. The first time that it had contested a by-election in rural KZN. It shows a repeat of what happened in rural Limpopo when it contested a vote last month in a by-election, where it also got 10%. And that's a long way from what the pollsters, or certainly the experts, are saying. And I guess it's a similar thing for your party, for the One South Africa movement. Mmusi Maimane is very well known. You have a good reputation within political circles. What's happening with you guys? Have you had a chance to contest any by-elections yet?
Good morning, Alec, and good morning to all the listeners, and thank you for that introduction. Yes, I think firstly I'd like to just talk about the by-election results and the interesting trajectory that we're all seeing. And it's very much what I've always believed in for a long period of time, that voters are looking for new players and new voices, and we need to get new individuals onto the playing field. And with respect to the political parties, I'm very much a supporter of, people always think because I'm pushing the trajectory of electoral reform and independent candidates that I'm anti-political parties. I really very much believe that political parties have got a place in our society, but it goes about an open democracy and an open party list system that people are looking to the political parties and saying to us, don't only show us your values and your principles, show us the people and the individuals that are going to represent us. And so as a result, my take on the by-election, and especially the one that you mentioned yesterday, I don't believe it's only got to do with Action SA. It's got to be with the individual that represented them. And I think we're going to see many, many more results coming in, that parties are going to push up the qualification criteria of people that are experienced, truly represent their communities, to be able to get the vote. So that's on you, a response to your first question. Regarding One South Africa movement, Mmusi has been an outstanding partner for the last 3 years in One South Africa movement, but you know Mmusi well in the BizNews community, and I know him very well for the last 3 years. Mmusi is a true activist, and he's called to politics. And I just always had a good laugh because he couldn't keep anymore just waiting for this Concourt case and the legal trajectory of the electoral bill. And we really had to struggle in maintaining him to say, Mmusi, please don't go on your own. But I really believe that what he's done to form BOSA was outstanding. I really believe that what BOSA is trying to do of being a political party that's going to be a combination and a consolidation of all independent candidates is a very good trajectory. And when it comes to One South Africa movement, the listeners must know there's a very big difference. One South Africa movement is a social movement and will never be on a ballot paper. So we will always remain, and I'm very strong in my custodianship of that, to be neutral, to be a social movement in the interest of the people, and that we will never push one political party. And for the last 25 years, I haven't been aligned to any political party, and I really hope to keep that objectivity right till the end of this whole process.
Well, thanks for clarifying that, because you are synonymous with Mmusi in many people's minds, but he's got, and I thought he turned your movement into a political party, but clearly he hasn't. He's gone off on his own with a different movement. Do you have any understanding of how he's doing, how BOSA is?
They're really doing very well in their plight to identify new players and new leaders. You would have seen that they've trying to get and identify 200 independent candidates. And I know they're very far progressed with that. And I know that with all many of the OSA complementary staff have moved over to Mmusi to help him in this trajectory. And I know I'm only getting very, very good feedback, even although I'm at arm's length and not involved with them at all.
All right, so that's interesting clarity. And also your take on the by-elections. It's more about the people than it's as much about the people as about the party. But when we get to a national election, at the moment anyway, it's got nothing to do with the people and the change in the Electoral Act. I recall having a webinar in June 2020 with Teresa Conradi from the New Nation movement and Herman Mashaba together. And they unpacked how dramatic the Constitutional Court decision was for South African politics going ahead. One of the reasons why I'm really keen to talk with you today is so that you can tell us why that was so important, just refresh our memories, and then explain to us what's happened or what hasn't happened.
No, Alec, it's really a minefield, and it's just so, I really believe it's one of the key to the solutions to our democracy and to the future of our country. And the reason for that is, you might not know, your viewers might not know, I was instrumental in 2018 already to lodge a court application to the Constitutional Court in my personal name to change the electoral system. And while people will see me as pushing once again, the independent candidacy notion, it's not that at all. I was very privileged in my early years in government in 1997 and 1998, in the years when we were drafting the Constitution. And I knew there was always transitional arrangements, that our electoral system was never to be permanent. It was always going to change. And then, as you know, came the Van Zyl-Slabbert report and everything. And I actually went to many of the political leaders as late as 2018, 2017, to say we must change our electoral system to get a more neutral, accountable system where we, the people, can nominate our best 400 people to represent us in government. And Alec, you can't believe it. Everybody was so supportive, and they said, Michael, great idea, we have to do it. But because they had so much power, they wouldn't do it. And so the only reason that I could force government to do it was to find a conflict in the constitutional dispensation and the Electoral Act, which we found in terms of 19(1)(b), that said that every individual has got the right to stand to public office. It's a human right in Section 19. It's a fundamental, very important right. But the Electoral Act said everyone that wants to be in political office must belong to a political party. So if Alec Hogg wants to stand to government, you can't, Alec, because you have to belong to a political party. We took it to court and we got judgment in 2020, in the 11th of June. So it was forcing government to change the electoral system. And the problem that I've got with the way government has approached it, they've looked at it as an administrative issue, just to go and see how they can include independent candidates. But our notion, and what the public has always wanted, is we want a different system that gives us more accountability, that we can nominate our own leaders and use this to change the system. And that's why government choose the minimalistic option, which we really oppose.
That's so interesting. And I think it's something that is obviously not being welcomed by the incumbents, by the status quo. We know, for instance, that the Democratic Alliance is lobbying quite strongly now for a threshold below which political parties, let alone independents, don't get represented in parliament. So they say, what this happens elsewhere in the world, and we're going to have coalition politics. So we can't just have, like in Johannesburg, where the mayor comes from a party that got 10,000 votes out of 1 million voters, because they happen to be the swing vote in one or other coalition. And that, I suppose, has got its own argument, whereas your argument presumably comes from a very different
Well,
place.
my argument comes from I'm a lawyer and I've really become very much interested and involved for the last 25 years in constitutionalism. So from my point of view, it's nothing got to do with politics. It's only got to do with justice. It's got with, in terms of Section 9 of the Human Rights, about equality before the law, protection of individuals, and getting our system right. Because, Alec, the truth be told, and the way the electoral bill is at the moment, come 2024, and one of the political parties don't get the election result that they believe they deserve, what's going to happen? The first thing they're going to do is apply to the Constitutional Court that the elections are unconstitutional. And so our role as civil society, and definitely as One South Africa movement and the movements that I chair, is to make sure that we're 100% constitutional, that we test it, that we're in order, and we go broader in fulfilling the values of a democracy, of who we are as a nation, because the power to vote is the heart of our democracy. It's what we fought for. It's what the Freedom Charter says. And I promise you, I don't know why I'm so burdened about it, but I really want to fight for it. But in a completely ethical, non-complicated, consistent trajectory in protection of the people and to do what is right.
So are you saying, and just maybe reiterate what you said a moment ago, because the way I hear it is that we're going to have an election in 2024, and if let's just say the ANC comes in with 40%, and it then it no longer governs the country, that it will then use the courts to try and postpone or even annul the voting, as similarly to what we saw that Donald Trump tried to do in the United States.
Well, that's exactly why I thought that this interview was so timeless, Alec, because the Constitution, as you know, is one of the best constitutions we've got in the world, and it allows a bill to be passed by Parliament, but if it only becomes an act if the President assigns to that bill. Now, at the moment, Parliament's passed the Electoral Act that we as civil society, and we 77 consolidated civil societies together, that's standing together, including the Anglican churches, the South African Council of Churches, and a whole lot of civil society, saying that this bill is unconstitutional. But it was passed by the ANC and passed by Parliament. But now it's on the President's desk. And so before it becomes an act, the President has got a right in terms of Section 79 of his powers to go and say, I'm going to sign this into an act, and then it's an act. And then if we don't challenge it to the Constitutional Court, and that's why no matter what happens, this bill has to be challenged. And besides the fact that I 100% believe it's unconstitutional, it has to be challenged so that come 2024 elections and the results come out, no political party can go and challenge it and say it's unconstitutional. So your take is proper, but it just shows you how serious it is, and how serious the situation is at the moment.
So we have a bill that the Constitutional Court said Parliament had to put together. They've made a mess of it. You say it's not constitutional what they've done. Now that's going to go to the President, who is, it seems, playing Stalingrad.
Well, Alec, it's just really, it's so embarrassing to us as civil society, because Parliament went 3 times to the Concourt for extension. It was first going to be the 28th of December, then it was the 31st of January, and then it was the 28th of February. And Parliament the Constitutional Court gave a judgment that Parliament needed to remedy the unconstitutionality before the 28th of February. They did, But what the truth is that before the 28th of February, it also included the signature of the president. Because what happened, the speaker, when she wrote to the Concourt for the extensions, she said, we need the extensions because the president still needs to sign the bill. Now we already the end of March and the beginning of April, the president still hasn't signed. So definitely Parliament is in contempt of court. So the problem we've got is civil society, and especially myself, we can't go and challenge at the moment, go to the Constitutional Court, because we wrote to the president to say, Mr. President, please tell us, are you going to sign the bill? Are you going to refer the bill back to the Parliament in terms of your powers in Section 79? The Concourt still also hasn't given a judgment of why they gave the extension, so we wrote to the Concourt to get the judgment. So from civil society, you must always remember, we donor-based, so we have to spend our money wisely and properly. We can't spend our funds on legal challenges and senior counsel working on the senior challenges to be told in 48 hours the president has decided to either send the bill back to Parliament or he signed the bill. So we need these answers. But I promise you my request, or our request as civil society, is to the president, please take us into your confidence. Please submit this bill to the Constitutional Court to determine its constitutionality. We are completely neutral in this. It's a complicated bill. I can promise you I've never spoken to so many legal specialists and experts that are so contradicted in their findings and their expressions of what is constitutional and not. But it goes to the heart of our democracy, and it's worth fighting for.
All of this makes me think that you might be a little unrealistic. If you think that the president has been sitting on the bill because he's got too many other things on his plate, or that your appeal to him is going to make him sign it, it seems a little naive, because he clearly knows what's at stake here. The political parties know what's at stake. The status quo doesn't want to change. This electoral bill will change things very dramatically. Why do you think that appealing to his better judgment, better nature, is actually going to open the door?
Well, he's in a very precarious position, because what's happened is, if he doesn't submit this bill to the Constitutional Court himself, what is happening is, definitely as OSA, from our legal team point of view, we've already given notice we're taking it to the Concourt. We have already drafted papers. We're just waiting to serve. But what happens is, no public entity can go directly to the Constitutional Court. You have to ask for direct access. I've applied for many direct access applications. It takes 3 months just to get permission to get direct access. Once you get direct access, you need to start serving papers, which will take another 6 months, which means this constitutional trajectory or legal trajectory will take us till the end of the year. Elections are supposed to be in March next year. How do the IEC, how do political parties go and start preparing for elections? So the president needs to decide. He's going to protect his party and put the whole country and the elections in jeopardy, or he's going to do and take the public into his confidence, do what is right and fitting, apply directly, and help the constitutionality and to determine the constitutionality in the right and proper way.
Just bottom line it all for us, if you would. Given that this is very important, there's lots of complexities. What is the bottom line? Are we not going to have an election in 2024?
No, we're definitely going to have an election. We are a constitutional state. What it does do, even although the presumed elections are for March 2024, there is an extension period of 6 months that we can go till August 2024. And so, Alec, we as civil society, we've got our submissions. We've got a well-oiled machine that the trajectory is well planned. What we're going to do is we can get mandatory orders. We've got the New Nation movement that can immediately file for remedies. It's all, we're definitely on track. And the most important thing about that is that we're going to ask the Constitutional Court to say, Parliament hasn't done their job. We're going to ask Parliament to do what we call a writing in order, where the Constitutional Court says to Parliament, you failed. You in Morai, you haven't done what you must do. We, as the Constitutional Court, are going to do a writing in order of how the elections will be run in 2024. And so that's what we believe is going to happen. But in landing my plane, Alec, the way we as civil society see it, and definitely with my type of personality, I always want us to be seen as a constructive force and not a destructive force. And so we need to play with government to be seen as their arm bearers. Unfortunately, government doesn't see civil society as their arm bearer. They haven't taken us in their confidence. I've applied to the leaders of political parties so many times and said to them, please hear us out. Please, let's do a projection of how we see it. Please include us. And after many, many requests, not one political party has reached out to us. Government hasn't reached out. Parliament hasn't reached out, which really makes us feel very sad.
Dr. Michael Louis, and I'm Alec Hogg from BizNews.com.